So now we played around with our model here in this interactive shell. And that's nice for learning how to work with it, how to create data entries, how to query them. But of course, it's not ultimately how we're going to work with the model. Instead, I'll quit this interactive shell and close this terminal for now, because we're not going to work in the shell with it. Instead, I want to use that model in my views. I want to have templates where I output the books, for example, and so on. Now, of course, we also might need more than one model in our application, in our website. And we're also going to see more than one model later in the course. We're going to see more than one model in our blog course project. And we're also going to talk about relations between models. But for the moment, I want to keep it simple and focus on this basic model which we have here and how we could utilize that in our views and in our templates. And therefore, I want to create one simple template now where I output all my books. And I then want to make every book clickable so that we're taken to the detail page of the book where we output more information, more details about that book. Just so that we also see how we can use our model in our actual application code, in the views and in the templates. So therefore, I'll start by adding a templates folder in the book outlet folder. So in that app folder here. And in templates, I'll then add an index.html file, which will then be used for outputting a list of all books. And I'll add a book detail HTML file for the single book detail page. I will also add a base HTML file here, and we could add this in a global templates folder as we did it earlier in the course, but to keep things simple and so that we don't have to tweak the settings and add our template dir, I'll just add it in here. Now in base HTML, I'll start by creating that HTML5 skeleton, where I then register a block named title here, and end that block, of course, also like this. And here we then add a block named content or body or whatever you want, and we end that block here. So that will be the base template, which I then want to extend in the other two templates. And I'll start with index.html. There, the goal is to extend the base HTML file, and we can insert it like this. Django will find it, but actually we should of course follow that best practice and add a subfolder in templates, which we also name book outlet, and then copy our HTML files into that. So drag them into that book outlet subfolder. And then in index.html, therefore extend book outlet / base HTML. And that's in line with what you learned earlier in the course regarding how to place your templates there and why we have that nested folder in the templates folder. And then here we can add a block title to inject content into that title block in the base template. And for example, here say all books. And then prepare the body. So the block content, where we will then render a list of all books. So here we'll then have an unordered list somehow. And in there, I then want to have list items with the books. So for the moment, I'll hard code this single list item here, but soon we're going to output data here, which is coming from a database. But speaking of that, the goal now is to create a view and a URL that loads that view that then renders this HTML page. And therefore, let's go to the views.py file in the book outlet folder. And in there, I'll add a new definition and name this index. And here we get that request automatically, as you learned. And I want to return the result of calling render for that index.html template. So here, it's index.html, but the first argument is actually the request which we have to forward, and then we render the index.html file for this view function. And to make sure that this view function is called, we want to add a URLs py file here in the app folder, And in there, add the URL patterns list. And of course, also make sure that from Django URLs, we import path like this, and then call path here and have an empty path, and also import from our views file. So from the current folder, import the views file and load views.index for an empty path here. And we're soon going to add a second path as well, but for the moment, that's it. And in the project URLs py file, in the project named folder here, we therefore, of course, want to import include from Django URLs and then register a new path here, which maybe starts with an empty segment so that directly after the domain / anything redirects us to the URLs, which I'll include here, and that are the book_outlet.urls. So the URLs defined for that app. And that's all just something you already saw. With that, we can open up this terminal here, this integrated terminal, and then simply run python-free manage py run server to bring up that development server again, which hosts this Django application. And on localhost 8000, I then get an error, template does not exist. That makes a lot of sense because in views py, that of course should be book outlet / index HTML. And with that, if we now reload, here is my book list with this one single item I have at the moment. Now I have no styles here because I want to focus on just the data and the HTML code. Of course, you can add CSS styling if you want to, but I now instead want to focus on how we can actually get the data from the database in our view and pass it on to the template.